Hey guys, these will be your notes for the respiratory system. The respiratory system, the function of the respiratory system is it will allow for gas exchange. So the function of the respiratory system is it will allow for gas exchange, which just means we're going to trade oxygen for carbon dioxide. So every time we inhale, we're going to take in oxygen for our body to use, but then when we exhale, we're going to trade it for carbon dioxide, and we're going to get rid of that excess carbon dioxide. So that means we are trading oxygen for carbon dioxide. So we're exchanging those gases. There are a lot of different structures that we need to talk about when we talk about the respiratory system. The first structure being the mouth and nasal passage. And this is where we inhale oxygen and exhale CO2. Okay, so it's just our mouth and our nose and the cavity behind our mouth and our nose where we can inhale that oxygen and where we can get rid of that carbon dioxide. The larynx is actually going to be a hollow organ. That contains our vocal cords. So this is our voice box, okay? It's our scientific name for our voice box. It's hollow, which allows those vocal cords to vibrate when you speak and make different sounds. We then have our epiglottis. Our epiglottis is going to save us from choking, because what our epiglottis is, it's a small flap of cartilage that covers our trachea. So a small flap of cartilage that's going to cover our trachea. We're going to talk about the trachea in a second. The trachea is basically our windpipe. Okay, it's where the air actually goes in and down our long tube into our lungs. And this epiglottis is going to be a little small flap of cartilage that's going to cover our trachea so that food can't get stuck inside of our trachea. And our trachea is that tube that carries air and oxygen to our lungs. The bronchi is actually going to be a split. So if our trachea is carrying air down to our lungs, the bronchi is going to be this little split that brings air to each of those lungs. So we'll say a split in the trachea that goes to each of the lungs. So again, if the trachea is the windpipe, the tube that brings air down to our lungs, these splits would be each bronchi. We then have the diaphragm, and the diaphragm is actually going to be a muscle. And it's below our lungs. That's going to contract and expand and allow our lungs to actually take in air. So when that diaphragm actually contracts, it creates the space for our lungs to fill up with that air, and then when it expands, it pushes all the air out of our lungs as we exhale and breathe out all that carbon dioxide that we don't want. And the lungs, finally, the main organ of the respiratory system, is where gas exchange occurs. So remember, when we talk about gas exchange, it's taking oxygen into our body and getting rid of the CO2. Well, that oxygen actually needs to be transported throughout our body for cell respiration to occur in all of our cells. So that oxygen is going to be transported by our blood away from our lungs, and then that blood will actually deposit some carbon dioxide in our lungs to be able to exhale and get rid of outside of our body. And we have a small diagram on the back we can fill in. Now I know it's going to be hard for you guys to type into these boxes, but what we can actually do is you can use the draw tool on Microsoft Word to actually draw in the words, like I'm using on the smartboard, or you can create little text boxes around these in order to label the diagram. It will be up to you. But these first two boxes we're actually going to call the same thing. This is going to be your nasal and mouth passage. You can see it's just the cavity behind our nose where we can inhale and exhale. Back here we have the larynx and kind of the back of the throat. That's going to be where our vocal cords are housed that allow us to speak. Here we have the epiglottis. And it's a little tough to see, but it is a small flap that will just cover our trachea so that food does not go down our trachea, so we don't choke. That tube is the trachea, the long windpipe, which then splits into bronchi. But then actually I'm going to skip these two boxes for now, but down below our lungs is going to be our diaphragm. Which is the muscle that contracts and relaxes. And then when we talk about our lungs, we obviously have two lungs. We have a right lung and a left lung. But the direction of those lungs is actually based on the patient's or the person's view. So if I'm standing here looking at you, like this diagram is, the right lung will be my right lung, and then the left lung will be my left lung. So when I look at this diagram, the right lung is actually on this side, and the left lung is actually on this side. So again, it's not looking at the paper, right and left, it's from the person's point of view. So right lung, left lung.